All right, welcome everyone to part 2 of our 2-part series on Arlington's economy. Today's program is Arlington's economy in 2021. What does the future hold? We're going to try to look into our crystal ball to see what we can expect this year to look like. If you missed our program last month, which is part 1 of this series, you can view it on our website at www.arlingtoncommitteeof100.org under the Past Programs tab, or you can also see the recording on our Facebook page. My name is Hannah Dannon-Belser. I am the chair of the Arlington Committee of 100, and I will be your moderator for this evening. If you're watching us on Facebook and you think this is something your friends would like to hear, please consider sharing the Facebook Live with your friends. For those of you on Zoom, to stay in touch with us, please like and follow our Facebook page. We publish you all know, I think, that we publish our events through our email announcements, but we also publish the Facebook events. So that allows you to hear about our upcoming programs and share them with other folks who want to tune in. Before we kick off, I do have a couple things I want to share. First, and I'm sure everyone is very enthusiastic to hear this news, the vaccine news is being disseminated rapidly, and we want to share a resource with our viewers. You may have heard that this week, Arlington has entered phase 1B of vaccinations. Arlington County's Public Health Division is collecting pre-registrations for anyone in categories 1B or 1C. Pre-registration does not mean that you will get the vaccine immediately, but it does get you in the queue to be contacted. Please take a look at the chat box. You just got something pop up on your screen if you are in Zoom. That is the link to where you can go to pre-register. That link is also on your screen here if you want to take that down. Next, on that note of hope and vaccines, I hope you will join us for our next program on February 10th at 7 p.m. It is Virus and the Vaccine, What's the Way Forward in Arlington? You can go ahead and register now. There will be, if you watch that chat box again within Zoom, we have another link coming out that is the link for you to sign up. We are really honored that we're going to have Dr. Ruben Verghese, the Public Health Director for Arlington County, and Nancy White, who is the Executive Director of the Arlington Free Clinic. She is also the co-chair of the Arlington Complete Vaccination Committee. They will both be joining us. We're so excited to bring this program to you to be able to share where Arlington will be on vaccine distribution as of that date. In the meantime, you can monitor arlingtonva.us/COVID-19 for live-time updates from the Arlington County government. I'm going to say that link one more time, and I'm going to say it slowly. arlingtonva.us/COVID-19. That is Arlington County's website for this information. Each of our panelists are going to be presenting here, and then it will be followed by a Q&A with the audience. If you're with us here on Zoom, you can submit questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you take a look at the slide up here, you can see kind of some directions. We're going to get to as many questions as possible. We frequently have many, many great questions, and we're going to do our best to get to, we'll try to prioritize, especially questions that seem to crop up from multiple people. We always try to get those ones in, but I do encourage you to keep your questions concise and to ask them in the form of a question. Those are the questions that I will definitely be prioritizing if they're concise and in the form of a question. And lastly, thank you to the Arlington Community Federal Credit Union for being our sponsor for this program year. The Committee of 100 Board of Directors has really appreciated this partnership with the credit union, and it's supported us in delivering critical programs to the community as a free service this year. So thank you to the credit union. All right, that is it for my announcements. So here we are in 2021. I think even through this virtual screen, I can hear a pained exhale that would otherwise fill that Marymount room where we used to hold our programs. This past year has been challenging, though the word challenging seems really trite this week. Many of us were excited to usher in 2021, embracing the symbolism of a new year and a fresh start and hope in the form of a vaccine. And yet we're in the midst of another crisis. I don't think I'm the only one here tonight who's been struggling to sleep this past week and has been reading through breaking news updates at every interval of the day. And I don't think I'm the only one who's feeling demoralized as the news feels worse every hour. I think all of us are really different people than we were this time last year. Some of us may feel hardened and overwhelmed, but I also think we're more dedicated to our resolve to be part of solutions. The Arlington Committee of 100 has been around for 67 years, and our mission centers around democratic processes and the importance of civic engagement and civic institutions. I'm confident that these are the things that are going to last through this moment and into many more better years. It's a Wednesday night in the middle of a national crisis, yet another national crisis that we have never lived through. And you're here dedicated to learning about what is to come in Arlington's economy. You're here tonight to look forward. The fact that you're here tells me that you're able to think beyond this past week and into what our community needs to be stronger later. Or likely maybe a year, but hopefully much sooner than that. The people who attend the Arlington Committee of 100 are people who are ready to learn and who are so dedicated to the betterment of this community that they're going to demand that we become better and stronger. You're our nonprofits, our small businesses, our government leaders, our neighbors, and community volunteers who we're going to rely on in 2021. As we rebuild, our current leaders will help forge our path, but just as importantly, new leaders will emerge. So if you're someone who's wanted to be a leader in making things better, I hope you'll keep tuning into our programs throughout the rest of our program year so we can help arm you with the information you need. Our panelists tonight, Telly Tucker, Kate Bates, and Jeanette Chapman, are some of the many leaders who are going to be bringing our community back into business. So tonight they're going to talk about what's to come and what work needs to be done. So I'm going to go ahead. That's enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our speakers. First, I want to introduce Jeanette Chapman, who is the director of the Stephen Fuller Institute for Research on the Washington Region's Economic Future. The Institute is part of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Jeanette has been with GMU since 2013, and she's a graduate of their master's program in public policy. She has a very accomplished list of publications with a particular focus on housing, employment, and demographic trends. So Jeanette, if you could go ahead and kick us off. And you are on mute, Jeanette.
Thank you. And I am in hopefully 10 minutes going to cover everything you need to know about the pandemic, but I'm being very sarcastic. So whenever we are thinking about what's going on in the economy right now, this is the slide that everyone should be thinking about, or the data set that everyone needs to be focused on. And these are the case rates for COVID. The economy right now is reacting to the health crisis, and the health crisis is driving the recession. That is the main fundamental thing that we should all be focused on. And the economic fallout in many ways is secondary. It's not like a normal recession that's driven by some sort of economic crisis. This is not an economic crisis to begin with, it's a health crisis. So if that's the only thing you remember coming out of tonight, that is you are well ahead of the curve. Our case rates in the Washington region have been tracking together. These are per population adjusted rates, with Northern Virginia shown in blue. And you can see that they more or less are moving together with DC and suburban Maryland. So I know that each county has its own population number or case numbers, as does the Commonwealth of Virginia. But in general, if you're looking even at DC numbers, they're going to be very similar to what's going on in your local community. Now, as a response to the pandemic, what happened was that the things that we used to do as consumers, as households, were no longer safe. And because of that, starting around March, all of us pulled back on our consumer spending. Anything that we didn't have to do, we stopped doing, especially things that were face-to-face. Overall, in the Washington region, consumer spending from residents fell upwards of 50% by early April. And you'll notice that this was before our first wave really even started. Early in the pandemic, most people were looking at what was happening nationally, and starting around May, we all started to look at what was happening locally. And so one of the things that has happened here is that you can see we had a recovery into kind of the summer months, but then with fall and the emergence of the second wave, the recovery has lagged. Arlington County, and you can see the District of Columbia spending decreased a little bit more than, say, Fairfax. And mostly this is because of the resident types. Both DC and Arlington have a large share of younger adults, and younger adults tend to spend more of their income on entertainment and restaurants, and all of that was stopped. So it's not necessarily a difference, it's more of a demographic change. In general, spending for transportation, leisure, and hospitality, so accommodation and food service, as on this chart, dropped off by the most amount. They had the largest declines, and they've had the weakest recoveries. Things like grocery store retail have actually increased during the pandemic for obvious reasons, and things, other durable goods sales have increased. So things that you use for more than a year or two, your washing machines, your dryers, your bigger ticket items, vehicle sales actually have ended on the up end, as have home sales. So it's not a full-scale pullback in consumer spending. There's been a net decrease, but they've also shifted types. What this has done, though, is it has affected our jobs. So all of the jobs that are involved in those consumer spending items that were in decline from spending or had decreased revenues dropped off. The Washington region at its peak in May lost 9.4% of all of its jobs compared to the prior year. For Northern Virginia, it was only 8.7, but that's not that much of a difference, and most of that's because of its industrial composition. So it's not, the difference here is very minimal. Nationally, we outperformed the nation. Again, this is mostly because we are a knowledge service economy and we could just send the bulk of our workers home. The thing about this recession, though, that is fundamentally different than prior recessions is that we are not really insulated because of the federal dollars. The federal presence in the region is helpful because we could send those workers home and without losing those jobs, but the consumer spending still fell off a cliff because it wasn't safe to do. Northern Virginia, as of the middle of November, was down about 5% of its jobs. And the majority of this decrease was leisure and hospitality, unsurprisingly. Generally, leisure and hospitality has accounted for about 40 to 50% of all of the job losses. Leisure and hospitality jobs also tend to have lower wage scales. So just to keep in the back of your mind that those jobs were hardest hit. The next largest decrease in absolute terms was education and health. Those jobs are non-hospital health care. So your doctor's offices, your dental offices, things that are a little bit more elective, people stopped doing. I do also want to point out that the professional and business service sector has two main components. The professional, technical, and scientific subsector in that main category never decreased during the pandemic. It continued to grow jobs, whereas the administrative and waste service, so your admins and the secretaries, those are the jobs that were cut. On the plus side, most of those gains are fairly nominal, and so don't read into them too much. They're not really representative of long-term strength. This is mostly just a little bit of noise. On a percentage point basis, again, leisure and hospitality is the hardest hit sector. However, transportation and utilities pops up as number 2 when looking on a percentage point basis. And so even though there are more trucks on the road trying to deliver things for our online purchases, it's not enough to counteract all of the other transportation type jobs that exist. One of the other main problems in this recession is that the job losses are not being translated in the same way on the labor market side. And what I mean by that is that instead of saying that you are now unemployed if you lost a job during the pandemic, more people are likely, or roughly 20 to 50% of people are likely just to leave the labor force. And this is true in Arlington. And the reason that I bring this up is because the unemployment rate doesn't include the people that have left the labor force. And so if you're just looking at the unemployment rate, the picture actually looks better than it really is. Now, some of these losses are going to be temporary on the labor force side, because if you are a restaurant worker, there are no new restaurant jobs to be had, and so you're going to leave the labor force until the labor market gets better. Some of these may be a little bit more permanent. It might be an acceleration of retirement. The other two factors that we're going to struggle with as we reopen and as the health crisis abates are that childcare, their workers have left the labor force, or former workers have left in order to stay at home with their children. And so the coordination between schools and the return to work is going to be a little bit noisy, and there's not going to be a perfect match there. And there are people that have left the labor force because they are concerned about either getting or spreading COVID, and they will not be interested in returning until there's enough of vaccination rates are high enough to get us to whatever the threshold is, whatever that the health experts deem safe. As I mentioned before, the losses in jobs are skewed low wage. Similarly, the workers that have lost jobs are more likely to be in low income households. So there are a very large number of households in our region that have been minimally affected by the economics part of this. But then there are a there's a concentration of low income, low wage households that have absolutely been slaughtered by this crisis, and on the economic side. And so just to keep in mind that the average or the median numbers here are not showing you the full picture, and sometimes we need to disaggregate a little bit more. Now, going forward, what to expect. We have lost around 164,000 jobs in the Washington region overall as of 2020. In 2021, we're going to get most of those back, but not all of those. The full recovery really won't happen until 2022. This is true for all of the sub-state areas, and this is mostly because the vaccination rates will increase incrementally, and we won't get the full benefit of this until 2022. 2023 is what I'm terming a repositioning year. We're going to have gone through 2 years of no plans, and 2023 is when everyone's going to need to do a new set of plans. And then 2024 will get a little bit of a bump because we're going to be able to plan again. And so with that, that is all I have. I think I made it within my 10, and I will hand it back to Hannah.
Perfect. Thank you. Wow, there was a lot of really, really good data in there. So that was fantastic. Thank you. So next, we're going to hear from Telly Tucker. We're going to go right into this. He is the Director of Arlington Economic Development. Telly started in this role way back in the very beginning of 2020, if you can remember that, when we were in a different world. And he has navigated Arlington Economic Development through the pandemic. He came to us in Arlington as the former Economic Development Director in Danville, Virginia. I do want to share, because this is my Telly fact I really like, he is not only accomplished in the field of economic development, but he de-stresses as a concert pianist. And I'm sure that outlet has been incredibly helpful in navigating the stress of the job in this past year. So Telly, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate the invitation. And actually today, the 13th, is my 1-year anniversary in Arlington. So what better way to celebrate it than with the Committee of 100? So thank you for the invitation. I'm going to share my screen and take you through a few slides. Please let me know if you all can see that. Let's see here if I can get the presentation mode.
Yes, we can see. Sorry for the delay.
Perfect. All right, so in the invitation, really thinking about what I should discuss, and I was asked to speak a little bit about the challenges and the successes from 2020, and that inform the road ahead, and then what priorities Arlington has for economic development, and what citizens can expect in 2021. And I will even take that a step further, because some of these are more long-term macro goals that will stretch beyond 2021. But let me paint a picture for you, which we all lived through, but just in case you've forgotten, if you think about when this pandemic first started in March, and there was a declaration of emergency, it really affected Arlington's community in a unique way. About 90% of Arlington's businesses have fewer than 50 employees. That's how we define small business, and those businesses were most greatly affected. That represents more than 6,000 businesses in Arlington. And like every other community in the nation, that was drastically affected by the pandemic, we wanted to respond to our businesses and to try to be as creative and encourage them to be as innovative and resilient as possible. We initially started doing surveys where we learned that more than 3/4 of the businesses, particularly the small businesses that completed the surveys, communicated at least a moderate, if not a significant disruption of their business. And in the county, what we tried to do very quickly is pivot and listen to our small business owners particularly. What we heard is our larger businesses, our office users, were able to primarily work virtually, relatively seamlessly, but many of our small business, particularly those that depend on in-person interaction, they were most greatly affected. And so what did we do to respond? We responded based on what we heard from them. And so things like pivoting very quickly to use pick up and drop off areas on sidewalks, right-of-way areas, using special loading zones, encouraging our restaurants to pivot to delivery and other safer ways of allowing people to continue to support their businesses. We allowed for the temporary provision of temporary signs for retail and restaurants and food establishments. The county board approved loading dock hours with special exception site plans and use permits. Additionally, encouraging people to still support farmers markets and open air environments. From a business resources point of view, we stood up a page which provided grant information, both to the federal EIDL and PPP Payment Protection Program, helping guide businesses on how to apply to them. We provided some temporary tax relief by way of delayed collections through our treasurer's office, helping educate people how to apply for unemployment benefits, et cetera. Our Biz Launch team, which really works with our small business community, pivoted immediately and started offering one-on-one mentoring and webinars, all virtually. We created a page on our website to support local businesses, where we listed every business who was still open, and many of them were doing specials to try to encourage people to shop local. You're going to continue to see that throughout 2021. I know we all try to support our local businesses, but occasionally we fall back in our routines of, ordering something that we see online and have it delivered by, one of the national carriers. But we have been reminding people, and our new chair of the county board, Matt DeFerranti, actually placed a call to action in his opening remarks at the beginning of the year to continue to support local. And I want to thank those of you who have made a conscious effort to do so. I know quite a few of you probably ordered your Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners from local restaurants. So we thank you for that. We stood up a grant program, a small business grant program, emergency grant program in record time, receiving over 1,117 applications in a matter of 10 days. We distributed some $2.7 million to 393 businesses, 52% of which were represented minority and women-owned businesses or veteran-owned businesses. So when we think about that's where we've been and some of the challenges we faced, what does that mean for our future, and how will we move forward in 2021 and beyond? And I think this statement here really speaks to kind of a vision for Arlington economic development. And we want to ensure that Arlington rebounds as an economically vital, competitive, and sustainable community, much as the direction we have been headed in historically. We want to continue to build on these national recognitions that we've received over the last few years. Just in 2020 alone, accolades like the best city to live in America, or the best city for recent college graduates, or the best place for women in or the third best place for women in technology. These are all national recognitions that has placed Arlington, continues to place Arlington on the map, and as a desirable destination, not only for businesses, but also for people to live, and for job seekers to want to move because they want to be part of a community that's not only business friendly, but socially conscious as well. We are going to continue focusing on office vacancy rate. Many people may not quite understand how important the office vacancy rate is for us. And this graphic here kind of demonstrates where we have come from historically. Back in 2015, we saw record vacancy of more than 20.5%. And at the end of the 2020 fourth quarter, going into the first quarter, we were sub 15%. We have started to see some vacancy rate creep on that. And naturally, there is going to be some contraction in the market. And part of how we will rebound will be on our responsiveness, our flexibility, and our desired commitment to build on the momentum that we have had in the past. When I think about historically where we've come from and where we're going, some of you maybe have been around long enough to remember when we were primarily a home for federal leased and owned spaces and government contractors. Sequestration and the Base Realignment and Closure Act really did hit us hard. And so we have intentionally pivoted to diversify our economy, much like we would diversify our retirement portfolio. We believe there's strength in diversifying our local and regional economy as well. Why is the vacancy rate so important to us? This graphic illustrates what an average office building yields in tax revenue if it's empty. It's about a $1.1 million. This is on this. We took an average size building of 400,000 square feet in Arlington. It yields about $1.1 million in tax revenue. If that building is half occupied, it yields about $2.6 million in tax revenue. And if it's 100% occupied, it yields about $4.5 million in revenue. And so why is that important? Many of the programs, the social assistance programs that we offer through our Health and Human Services Department, through our food provisioning efforts, and through helping people stay in homes through difficult times like these, through our rent and mortgage assistance programs, the money that's generated from that really, the money that's generated from our both our residential and our business taxes help pay for many of those programs, as well as keeping our school system nationally ranked. When I think about our successes over the last 5 years in the diversification of this economy, you see some of the names represented. You would recognize many of them. And most recently, we need to add Microsoft to this slide because they announced just last week that they were going to be establishing a presence in Roslyn. We're going to continue to build on the partnership and creating an innovation hub with our universities, our hometown University of Marymount, and then of course the presence of other universities in the region like GMU and Virginia Tech as well. We are going to continue building on the reputation we've created for ourselves around being a tech talent hub. CBRE rated this region as the #2 tech talent hub in the United States just last year. We can't forget about our small businesses, however. Our small businesses, this slide demonstrates how many touches we have in our small businesses typically in a year time frame. And it's this, let me tell you, the hardest working team perhaps in Arlington might be our Biz Launch team who works with small businesses. They have had more than 66,000 businesses that they've served in the last 20 years since they created the Biz Launch program. In 2021, you're going to see a rollout of a new suite of support services for small business, including subject matter experts that are on retainer to help our small businesses continue to recover post-pandemic. You're going to see the county engage in e-commerce solutions to help some of our small businesses that don't have an online presence get online, particularly those that are legacy businesses. And you're going to continue to see, which we've already started, marketing initiatives and shop local campaigns through the winter months.
Kelly, this is Hannah. I'm just going to give you a quick time check.
Thank you. And I'm going to be wrapping up here. I've got maybe a couple more slides, but I also want to highlight the effect that the pandemic has had on our hospitality community. We've gone from the #1 locality in Virginia for visitor spending right now to having a less than 25% occupancy on most of our hotels. So we're going to continue to pivot into more leisure travelers, encouraging them to stay in our hotels as well. Lastly, I'll mention our cultural affairs. There's a tremendous amount of appeal to people that not only live here, but to visitors in our community to come in and support our arts community. And so we think about the beautiful visual artwork that we have all around town and our theaters and our performing arts spaces and helping those people in the short term do more things outside in a healthy and safe environment, but ultimately they have invested in technology that allows them to do more streaming as well. So that concludes my comments. I would love to take some questions at the end of the panel discussion. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Telly, so much. And I am going to endorse something you just said. I have the pleasure of calling Tara and Alex and Lourdes on the Biz Launch team. They're all good friends and I get to work with them professionally. I was in a meeting with a couple of them this morning. And when you say they are one of the hardest working teams in Arlington, it is absolutely true. So I'm glad, I loved hearing that shout out for them there. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move on to last, but definitely not least, is Kate Bates. She is the president and CEO of the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Kate's been with the Chamber since 2007, and she's coming up on 7 years as the CEO. She's established the Chamber as a key leader in Arlington and throughout the state of Virginia as well, especially in growing the Chamber's might in advocacy. The Chamber represents and supports business members from Amazons to your local neighborhood restaurants to people's side hustles to nonprofits and many, many businesses in between. She's a recipient of numerous awards, and just two of them are the 40 Under 40 for both the Washington Business Journal and the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. She also happens to be my former boss when I worked at the Chamber, and now I really like keeping her around as a very close friend. So we'll go ahead and pass it off to Kate.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was an absolutely beautiful introduction. I appreciate it so much. It's great to be here tonight with everyone, including the two wonderful panelists who I'm pleased to call colleagues, as well as friends, Jeanette and Telly. So I was asked to talk about the challenges and opportunities in 2021 for Arlington businesses and the work that needs to happen at local, state, and federal levels to support businesses in Arlington. So quite a charge there. So we'll get through as much as we can tonight. So a little background, and Hannah did a great job with her recap, but the Chamber is a membership organization of about 700 businesses with an interest in Arlington County. We have a diverse membership that ranges from solo entrepreneurs to Amazon, Boeing, and Nestle, with everything in between, including more than 100 local nonprofit organizations. We are not part of the county government. We are completely independent, although we work extremely closely with Arlington Economic Development, Telly and his team, and really all aspects of Arlington County government. Our mission is to strengthen businesses and the economic environment for those who work, live, and do business in Arlington. And our vision is to be the essential partner for business success. And really that mission and vision is always so important, but it's never shown its importance like it has since the pandemic struck our community and the world around us. So we serve our members in 4 key areas: networking and business development, educational opportunities, community engagement, and business advocacy. And a big role that we played this past year was distilling what businesses needed to know to keep up with the pandemic, whether it was the different phases in Forward Virginia and what impacts were for their particular industry, to each funding program that was rolled out at federal, state, or local levels, and all of the details on how to apply quickly and effectively. So a little background on the situation. Again, Jeanette and Telly outlined very nicely, so I'll be brief here. We all know it's been 10 months since initial COVID lockdowns, which is much longer than people expected, but it's also much longer than businesses expected that this would last. The federal government passed stimulus and relief bills in March and December with funding for businesses, including the famous Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. But unfortunately, the original PPP funding was used up this summer, so there was no additional federal support for months until Congress reopened the PPP and added funding programs like a grant for shuttered entertainment venues, and the bill passed this late December. The Commonwealth did use some of its CARES Act funding to create the Rebuild Virginia grant program, but that was also quickly oversubscribed despite 2 expansions. Telly did a great job of recapping all of Arlington County's work, including their grant program, and also the relaxation of some of the usually strict rules around signage, curbside pickup, and outdoor dining to try to help businesses weather this storm. And it wasn't just government. The private sector stepped up as well, with programs like the Virginia 30-Day Grant Program, which was a micro grant program, and Dominion Energy's grant program for small businesses and nonprofits as well. We also saw businesses reach out to support other businesses and local nonprofit organizations and the broader community. You saw players like Amazon place an extremely large, several $100,000 order with local favorite Freddy's Beach Bar to provide meals to Virginia Hospital Center frontline workers and also to first responders. You saw Bayou Bakery, local favorite, again, partnering with Real Food for Kids and converting their kitchen to provide lunches for kids who are out of school and needed to make sure that they got their meals as well. So the challenges that we are facing at the start of 2021, and there really are many. A year of closed or reduced operations has inhibited the economy's capacity to withstand further lockdowns. These closures and restrictions have had a huge impact on our businesses, and that impact is not going away. So businesses are going to have to dig out of a hole, which we are still digging at this time. So it won't be enough to get back just to 100% operation. They will need support beyond just the elimination of these emergency restrictions. And businesses need support for these safe operations. We've been really pushing and advocating for testing and vaccine access, and we're pleased to see both moving forward. And we've been constantly talking with the local folks about access to testing, and we're thrilled to see things moving forward, both on the private and public sectors. We've seen more private businesses step up and even new businesses be created for effective testing and quick testing as well. And Arlington County actually recently stood up 2 new walk-in testing sites as well that are completely free. If you have insurance, you provide that, but if not, you still are tested at no cost at all. We heard repeatedly from our businesses and restaurants in particular that testing was a huge impairment for them, that if one person demonstrated any symptoms, even if you didn't know if that person was positive or not, anyone who worked a shift with them had to completely quarantine during that time, effectively shutting down very small businesses. So this progress is extremely important, as will, of course, the rollout of the vaccine be extremely important as well. Also, in addition to these tangible supports that are health related, there's other supports like support for metro funding and the transportation that's really the backbone of our region. Different industries have different needs, as we all know, so there's no one size fits all approach. It's also important to think about the residual impacts. For example, offices that are being safe and having their employees telework, which for many of them is absolutely the right decision, have an impact on nearby restaurants and retailers who depend on their employees for the foot traffic. Beyond just lost lunch traffic, spacing regulations for restaurants mean that most are operating at below 50% capacity, and the winter has hurt their businesses as some diners are not comfortable eating inside. They will really require our additional support to recapture a year of severely reduced businesses. As Telly noted, and Jeanette mentioned as well, hotels are Arlington's hardest hit sector, as business and group travel, which is such an important source of bookings for us, has fallen to near zero this year. Hotel occupancy continues to be a tiny fraction of usual. And again, the inauguration, which usually is a huge business boom, obviously looks very, very different this year. We should have had an emergency meeting with our Hotel General Managers Committee just today to talk about how the different hotels were addressing their plans moving forward. And cleanliness and spacing rules are raising costs and reducing revenue. Many cannot have as many customers in their facilities if you're a fitness facility, for example, and have to take extra precautions there as well. So even businesses that are open still need our support. There are a lot of known.
Hannah, I'm just going to give you a quick time check.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm sorry, I muted myself. Thank you, Hannah. A few unknowns about how long it will take to return to work once people are vaccinated. Also, office usage. People have become comfortable teleworking, and it's growing in popularity. So there are a lot of questions about what happens now. So just to briefly recap, again, in terms of policy recommendations moving forward, the federal, state, and local fronts, if we have quick time for each, again, we operate primarily at the local and Commonwealth levels. So we'll touch on those and just say more money from the federal folks would be a big help for everyone. So at the Commonwealth level, again, the General Assembly just gavelled in today, and really maintaining flexibility and avoiding overregulation is going to be key. On a county level, maintaining that same flexibility. The steps we took forward with the TOSIS and sign rules are important, but they're not enough. We need to keep pushing forward and make sure that we're providing those supports needed. And I always want to end with the positives. You know, we love seeing businesses come together, or people coming together to support our local businesses, and realizing the importance of voting with their dollars and promoting their favorite local businesses on social media. So we appreciate all the community support there and look forward to more to come. And I'm happy to take the questions. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kate. All right, I'm going to ask our speakers to go ahead and turn their cameras back on here. And then we get to our Q&A. I'm going to make Kate reference something that I love that she brought up, that Amazon has been such a great supporter of Freddy's Beach Bar down in Crystal City. For those of you who don't know, Freddy's is a real institution in Arlington. It is the only for a rainbow community. It is the only bar in Northern Virginia, and it's very family friendly. I actually got my takeout there for New Year's this year. So I am a big fan of Freddy's, so I'm glad to hear them get a shout out here tonight. So we're going to go ahead to the Q&A. These are questions that have been submitted by our audience. We're going to get to as many as possible, and I'm going to read the questions out to our full panel, and y'all can decide which questions you want to chime in on and which ones you want to defer. So we will go ahead and get started. So Nancy asks, how do you think teleworking will help or hinder Arlington's economic recovery? Timon asked a related question about how teleworking will impact long-term commercial real estate outlook. So if you could speak, if y'all could chime in on teleworking and how it's going to affect our economy as a whole, that would be great.
Sure, I'll start if that's okay.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, I hear that question a lot, and they say, oh, with everyone teleworking now, will anyone want to come back to the office? And will offices, start downsizing on their spaces because they no longer want to, or they no longer need as much space, and people can kind of work from anywhere? Will people even want to live in Arlington, or will they want to go somewhere else that's less expensive? And what I would say to that is we actually have been in constant contact with many of our largest office users, asking them what their employees are saying and what their strategic goals are around utilizing office space. And what we hear is it's a bit of a mixed bag. We've heard some that say they plan to offer more flexibility. Their employees may not need to be in the office every day. We've heard some others say they need a little bit more space because they're going to do more social distancing. And we've heard some say that, they really do want to offer more virtual work. And so they may be subletting part of their space. But overall, what we heard was that everyone, even the people who are introverted, would like to get back to the office because there is a certain amount of creativity, particularly those who are in business development. There's a certain amount of relationship building that you can do sitting across the table from someone that you can't do in a virtual environment. And even those people, as I referenced earlier, that are introverted say, I really miss the coffee pot conversations, and the people that are in my house, whether they're my kids or whether they're my roommates or my pets, they're all driving me crazy. And so I'm looking forward to get back to the office. So I would expect us to see a little bit of a mixed bag. I think we will probably see some increased vacancy, but the county has already started having conversations about how we encourage flexibility in some of the uses for the space. I think we saw recently some movement from vacant office space, making it easier and more of an administrative approval process to convert some of those to residential. And I think you're going to see more of that on particularly on Columbia Pike and maybe even Lee Highway, with some of the use exceptions that are going to be allowed to fill some of those ground floor spaces that were traditionally reserved for restaurant and retail. So that's my initial thought around that.
And I'll pick up just briefly because I'm old enough to remember that we've had these conversations before with the flattening of the world, when the internet was fully adopted, that everyone was going to be working remotely forever, except that not only did that not happen, the opposite happened. Things got denser. The largest metros actually grew their share of employment, and all of the things that Telly is talking about, the knowledge spillovers and the informal networks and all of the stuff that we do face to face, were wired like that. And the pandemic's not going to erase that.
I think Telly can best speak to, the stats and what he's seeing. I mean, I would add just more anecdotally that I think it's a very company to company decision that we're seeing really everything across the spectrum. A lot of what I've seen, especially from some of our smaller office members, is that they're delaying these decisions. So people who had their leases coming available, who were planning to expand or were planning to make some sort of a move, a lot of those people have said, we're going to delay for now, whether that means going all virtual temporarily or whether that means staying in their current space a little longer than they anticipated. I think there's still a great deal of unknowns in the market, and we certainly hope, again, as Telly demonstrated with his slides, the commercial sector is just so important to us in Arlington. Whenever I speak to community groups, I always note what Telly did, that whether you care about great schools, parks, social services, you need the business community to be thriving because of the way that we have our roughly 50-50 split in taxes. So for all of us in the community, I certainly hope that the office sector continues to be healthy. But I do think it's something very important to watch moving forward, because behaviors will change. They have changed. Some groups that thought they would never telework have found that it's been pretty efficient for them as well. So, while we will see some groups fully return, we'll see some that also stay remote, and probably everything in between. So I think we're a little too early to be able to make that call.
I'll add too, just one more thing. related to assessments. People are asking, will it affect assessments, which affects tax rates? And I do think initially, actually, our new year tax assessment should be coming out within the next week or two. And I think you will see, particularly for like our hospitality community, where they have not had business or primarily over the last 9 months, it's greatly affected their business and their occupancy has been very low. I mean, do think we'll see a reduction in the value of some of those properties. But luckily, they only represent about 2% of our land book value in the county. So even with that, the housing, the residential housing market, if you've been following what's been happening in that, they are selling anywhere between 3 to 5% above list on average. And so that's strengthening our residential portfolio. So per Kate's comments, I think that the balance that we have with that 50-50 split is a healthy thing. And most communities really don't have it. Most communities really rely on their residential homeowners to pay the lion's share of taxes. And I think in Arlington, one of the areas of strength for us is that we do have that balance, such that when one of those sides kind of dips down, we have the other to pick it up.
That's great. Thank you very much. Tony asks, how will higher education play a role in helping the local and regional economy rebound?
That sounds like a question for Jeanette to me.
Yep. So higher ed is also a little bit of a mixed bag right now, kind of depending on what you're looking at, because many of them, including Mason, rely on state dollars, and state dollars are extremely tight right now. I think in the shorthand is that education is more of a stabilizer than a growth area for the most part. And the long-term economic benefits, it tends to be a slow burn of connecting entrepreneurs and incubating space. And I think that's something that most universities are going to try to push on because of where we are in this crisis. But in general, I wouldn't look to them as huge growth opportunities in the next year or so. They just don't have the flexibility and they don't have the budget for it.
Thank you.
I'll add a little bit about of course, Virginia Tech's Innovation Campus that was announced in concert with the Amazon announcement, recognizing that they are still moving forward with that. And I think that'll be certainly a motivating factor with growth right there in the National Landing and on the Alexandria side of the Northern Virginia region. And two, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention GMU's expansion of their Digital Innovation Center Institute for Digital Innovation, which is right in the heart of Arlington's Roslyn-Boston corridor. The work there has actually already started if anybody's driven by recently. And I'm really excited to sit on President Washington's advisory board for that. There are so many ideas and really innovative things that are going to be coming forward related to technology. And GMU's been an excellent partner along with Northern Virginia Community College in helping strategize about how we get displaced workers back to work, either through reskilling or upskilling, and helping them, get back to the workplace so that we can reduce our unemployment rate.
I hope we can squeeze 2 questions in here. We might just be down to 1 because we're a little tight on time, but this one is from John, who asks, what does the changing face of retail, including the shift to online commerce, mean for the future of our of our largest shopping hubs like Ballston Quarter and the Fashion Center at Pentagon City, as well as smaller neighborhood centers like Westover and Columbia Pike?
That's a great question. And I think that for anyone who didn't tune in to the Committee 100's presentation last month, Lisa from Trade Routes did a great job of talking about how, she had always intended to be pure brick and mortar, and she had transitioned to having products online. And it does sound like, again, she will maintain her great brick and mortar presence. But that's a great question, again, especially we saw the recent launch of Ballston Quarter. You will see, though, that even prior to the pandemic, most of the venues within Ballston Quarter are more experiential retail, or the food areas, the restaurants and that food hall downstairs are really thriving there at Ballston Quarter. So I think some of it is more the innovation of what that looks like. But no, just like people are using office space differently these days, people are used to getting their items differently these days as people are doing more delivery. So you might see some local shifts in model there. I think that, retail was doing a lot of shifting before. One of the partnership events that the Chamber did with Arlington Economic Development and Biz Launch that Hannah, I know you worked on as well with the credit union a few years ago, was on the changing face of retail. So I think that face continues to change. And I think our retailers and our restaurateurs are some of the most innovative, adaptive people I know. So I have all the confidence in the world in them to be able to pivot to what model works best for each of them.
Telly, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. There are, pre-pandemic, we saw a movement, particularly with big boxes. People who had big box retail stores, a lot of them were shuttering or either downsizing. We still see a fair amount of interest in kind of the boutique retail market. There are some things that people want to go and touch and taste and try on and experience before they purchase. Now, what I've heard some retailers say anecdotally is, we're going to have a brick and mortar presence, but instead of us having a stock room full of merchandise in the back that we're paying for that extra space, we may only have one of every size. And if you try it on and you like it, it shows up at your door the next day because we order it for you. And so I think, while I think we may be challenged to see some of the larger stores that historically we've seen with 50 to 100,000 square feet, I still think there's a healthy market for particularly the smaller boutique retailers, and as Kate mentioned, the experiential retail businesses.
So I'm gonna try to squeeze in this last one. We have I want to apologize to our audience because you have so many just fantastic questions tonight, and we just don't have time to get to them all. But I'm gonna squeeze in one that I think is quick, that is to you, Telly, is William asks, can you give a specific example of help that the mentors have provided to small businesses? So he's specifically talking about your Biz Launch program.
Sure. So some of our businesses, I'll give a couple examples. They've been given help on refinancing, taking advantage of the low interest rates right now. Many of our lending institutions are offering really low interest rates. So if there are ways to refinance or to refinance your debt, reinvest in your business, take advantage of some of the low fixed rates that are available today to have a more sustainable business on the back end, that's one example. Similarly, a lot of our small businesses were having difficulty in applying for some of the federal grant programs because they were, for example, they were a sole proprietor and they were filing their taxes under their personal Social Security number. Even though they had a federal employment ID number, what was happening was when they were applying for these federal grants using their federal ID, it showed up that they had no revenue. And so some of the businesses, we had to counsel them on how to correct that issue and position their business such that when they applied for these federal grants and programs, they were able to recapture some of the revenue that they were making. And it had to do with just how they were reporting. And then I mentioned one thing earlier that we're going to be doing in 2021. We really are trying to counsel a small business on how to identify who their customers are, where their customers are, who their repeat businesses are, and then to expand their market. So if you're selling primarily to people who walk through your door, how do you expand your offerings online through a point of sale system and through marketing that expands your customer base regionally, nationally, maybe even internationally? And so those are some ways in which we're helping people strategize. And we have lots of partners that do that. Our SCORE volunteers help. LEDC, which is a Latino economic development organization we work with regularly, and quite a few others in the region are helping reach and support small business.
Wonderful. Thank you, Telly. Well, there is so much. We could have spent 4 or 5 hours easily tonight, and we've just touched the absolute surface. So I actually want to encourage our viewers tonight, those of you who I've been really engaged in hanging on y'all's every word, and I imagine many of our audience have as well. One way to learn more about what these speakers are talking about is to subscribe to their email list and follow them on social media. Telly, I know I'm on the email list for both the Chamber and AED. I'm on a couple George Mason lists. Does the Schar School have its own email list? I'm on Tony Andrews' list.
I have the Fuller Institute has a list. If you email, I can type it into the chat box.
That would be perfect. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Email sfi@gnu.edu.
Perfect.
I will get you subscribed.
Thank you. So I would definitely encourage getting on their email list because I monitor these and I just learn a lot from them, and I learn a lot from their social media. So it's just really fantastic information that can keep you up to date. And as you want to, if you want to monitor throughout 2021, what things continue to look like. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here, but I'm going to ask you to stick with us for just about 2 more minutes. First, we had some great talk about small businesses and how we can support them. I thought that was a really interesting stat, Telly. I think, please stop me if I say this wrong. I think you said 90% of businesses in Arlington have 50 employees or less. So we are really a small business community. And we know in particular our restaurants, we heard have been hit really hard. So I want to challenge our audience to this weekend support a local restaurant. Maybe pick one that you haven't patronized before, whether you do socially distanced dinner or you get some takeout. If you are trying out a new restaurant, consider posting it to your social media that you've given it a try. The restaurants really love getting that extra love on social media to help get their marketing message out. If you're looking for a good restaurant option, the Chamber has a business directory on their website, arlingtonchamber.org. And if you click on business directory, you can search the restaurants there, and there's a lot of really good options. So thank you very much to our speakers for joining us tonight. This has been a really, really great panel. There's a lot to learn. Like I said, everybody, please keep up with what these folks are doing because it's really, really critical, and they just bring such fantastic leadership to Arlington. If you've seen me looking to the side here, I have Brian and Scott, our board members, Scott Pedowitz and Brian Marroquin are helping guide me in the background so I can keep us on track here tonight. So I want to thank them for all of their help behind the scenes to make this so successful. And again, we mentioned this at the beginning of the program, but I want to remind you, please make sure to register for next month's program, Virus and Vaccine, What's the Way Forward in Arlington? Our website is on the screen and you can read the details and register on our website. You also see that we just pushed out the link again where you can register. This is going to be a critical opportunity to learn about the vaccine rollout and where things stand on that date. We have the top 2 people that you want to hear from in Arlington. So you're going to get it straight from the leaders during that program. We're really lucky to have Dr. Verghese and Nancy from the free clinic. If you enjoyed tonight's program or if you missed some parts of it and you want to go back and watch it, the recording will be on our Facebook page. We were streaming it via Facebook Live, so it will be recorded on the Facebook page. If you think if other folks in your network would enjoy it, we'd ask you to please consider sharing the video on your Facebook page to your friends. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight, and we're really excited to see you next month in February.